a plant so nutritious that medieval monks planted it beside every monastery across Europe, yet today it is sprayed with poison in suburban yards. We call it a weed. They called it survival. Ground elder contains more vitamin C than oranges, more protein than lettuce, and spreads so aggressively that a single root fragment can feed a family for generations. It asks for nothing. No fertilizer, no irrigation, no human intervention. It simply grows. The industrial food system demands the opposite. It demands crops that require constant inputs, that depend on chemical interventions, that cannot survive without human control. Ground elder refuses this arrangement entirely. It grows in shade where commercial vegetables fail. It thrives in poor soil that would bankrupt a farmer. It returns every spring without replanting. The revolution begins when free food becomes the enemy of profit. Aegopodium podagraria was not eradicated because it tasted bad or caused harm. It was buried because it threatened the fundamental logic of agricultural commerce. For over 1,000 years, Benedictine monks deliberately planted ground elder around their abbeys from England to Poland. This was not decoration. This was strategic food security. The plant provided fresh greens during the hunger gap when winter stores depleted and spring crops had not yet matured. Records from 11th century monasteries describe ground elder soup as the first meal after Lenten fasting. The leaves emerged through late snow when nothing else grew. Medieval physicians prescribed it for gout, hence its Latin name podagraria, from podagra, the Greek term for gout. The plant contains compounds that reduce uric acid accumulation. But the medical establishment eventually shifted toward patented pharmaceuticals. Natural remedies offered no profit margin. By the 17th century, ground elder had escaped monastery gardens and colonized forests across northern Europe. Its success became its curse. A plant that spreads without human assistance cannot be commodified. The agricultural industry began its campaign of rebranding. Medicine became weed. Nutrition became nuisance. Value became villain. Compare the vitamin C content. 100 grams of ground elder leaves contain 200 milligrams of vitamin C. 100 grams of orange contains 53 milligrams. Ground elder delivers nearly 4 times the vitamin C of the fruit marketed as the vitamin C champion. The plant also provides significant calcium, iron, and protein. Young spring leaves contain up to 6 grams of protein per 100 grams of fresh weight. Spinach, by comparison, contains 2.9 grams. The nutrient density exists because ground elder evolved to store resources in its extensive rhizome network. Each leaf draws from this underground vault. Commercial vegetables have been bred for size and shelf life, not nutrient concentration. The trade-off is invisible until you measure. A pound of modern lettuce provides fewer minerals than a handful of ground elder. The system profits from selling volume, not value. We fill shopping carts with water disguised as vegetables. Meanwhile, the most nutrient-dense greens on the continent grow for free in the margins. Ground elder does not taste like grass or bitter weeds. The flavor profile sits between parsley and celery with a subtle sweetness and slight earthiness. Chefs in Scandinavia and Eastern Europe have revived its use in modern cuisine. Young leaves work raw in salads. Mature leaves perform beautifully in soups, stir-fries, and pestos. The stems can be blanched like asparagus. In Poland, ground elder soup remains a traditional spring dish called podagraria. Russian foragers pickle the stems alongside cucumbers. Swedish restaurants have featured ground elder in upscale-tasting menus. The plant is not some desperate survival food eaten only during famine. It offers legitimate culinary value that rivals cultivated herbs. Yet grocery stores will never stock it. The reason is simple logistics, not quality. Ground elder wilts quickly after harvest, lasting only days even under refrigeration. It cannot survive the supply chain from field to distribution center to retail shelf to home refrigerator. The system has built itself around foods that endure abuse. Flavor became the acceptable casualty. Ground elder operates through rhizomes, underground stems that spread horizontally through soil. A single plant can expand 5 feet per year. Each node along the rhizome can generate new shoots. This growth strategy allows ground elder to colonize areas where seeds would fail. The plant thrives in dense shade under trees where most vegetables cannot photosynthesize enough energy to survive. It tolerates soil pH from 4.5 to 7.5, acidic to neutral. It handles drought by going dormant, then resumes growth when rain returns. It survives temperatures down to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. These traits evolved over millennia in the understory of European deciduous forests. Ground elder adapted to conditions that would kill domesticated crops instantly. Modern agriculture rejects such plants because they cannot be controlled with industrial methods. Mechanical harvesting requires plants that grow in uniform rows at uniform heights. Ground elder spreads in chaotic networks. Herbicides work against it, but the rhizomes survive underground and re-sprout. The plant is not invasive because it is evil. It is successful because it is brilliant. The transition from subsistence farming to industrial agriculture occurred rapidly between 1945 and 1970. Food production shifted from diversity to monoculture. Corporations needed crops that could be planted with machines, sprayed with chemicals, harvested mechanically, and transported long distances. Ground elder met none of these requirements. Its value existed only at the point of harvest. No processing, no packaging, no distribution infrastructure could extract profit. The plant was declared a weed through agricultural extension programs funded by chemical companies. Homeowners received pamphlets explaining how to eradicate ground elder with glyphosate. The same pamphlets advertised lawn services and fertilizer products. The message was clear. A diverse yard was a failed yard. A managed lawn required inputs. Free food was rebranded as the enemy of property values. Ground elder went from monastery staple to suburban nightmare within one generation. The knowledge of its uses faded as the plant itself was poisoned into submission. Those who continued eating it were viewed as eccentric or primitive. Foraging became nostalgia rather than wisdom. Cultivating ground elder requires no skill. Obtain a small rhizome section from an existing patch. Plant it in partial shade with average soil. Water once to settle the roots. Then forget about it. The plant will expand steadily without further intervention. If confined to a container or raised bed with barriers, it remains manageable. If allowed to roam, it will dominate the space. This characteristic is precisely why it works for food security. Ground elder cannot fail. Lettuce bolts in heat. Spinach dies in full sun. Arugula requires consistent moisture. Ground elder simply persists. Harvest by cutting leaves at the base, leaving roots intact. The plant regenerates within weeks. A 10-foot patch can provide fresh greens for a family from April through October in temperate climates. No replanting, no succession sowing, no crop rotation. The yield continues year after year, decade after decade. This permanence is the ultimate threat to the seed industry. Small communities across Europe have begun deliberately reintroducing ground elder to community gardens and food forests. The plant fits the permaculture principle of stacking functions. It provides food, suppresses less useful weeds, stabilizes soil, and requires zero maintenance. In urban areas, ground elder has colonized abandoned lots and thrives despite pollution. Foragers have mapped these wild patches using mobile apps. The knowledge is spreading quietly beneath the surface of mainstream food culture. Some farmers are experimenting with ground elder as a commercial perennial vegetable, harvesting young shoots for farmers markets. Restaurants pay premium prices for foraged greens that once grew free outside their doors. The irony is almost unbearable. We destroyed abundance, then pay luxury rates to recover fragments of it. Ground elder represents a larger truth about the food system. The most valuable resources have been reclassified as problems. Perennial vegetables that require no replanting undermine the seed industry. Nutrient-dense wild foods expose the emptiness of commercial produce. Plants that spread without human control threaten the narrative of agricultural expertise. The system demands scarcity to maintain profit. Ground elder offers abundance for free. Growing ground elder is not just gardening. It is an act of reclaiming food sovereignty from corporate control. Every leaf harvested represents a transaction that never occurred. No purchase, no packaging, no transportation, no middleman. The plant exists outside the economy. This is why it has been systematically vilified. Modern agriculture has convinced us that food must be difficult, that cultivation requires expertise and expensive inputs. Ground elder proves otherwise. It demonstrates that nature provides without demanding payment. The implications are uncomfortable for an industry built on dependency. If one plant can feed a family without inputs, what else have we been told is impossible? How many other food sources have been buried beneath the mythology of agricultural progress? The distinction between weed and vegetable is not botanical. It is economic. Weeds are plants that refuse to be commodified. Vegetables are plants that submit to control. Ground elder chose its side long ago. The knowledge of ground elder did not vanish by accident. It was actively suppressed through agricultural policy, chemical marketing, and cultural conditioning. Our grandparents' generation knew these plants by name and use. We inherited ignorance disguised as progress. The recovery begins with recognizing what was taken. Ground elder still grows across temperate regions, waiting in forest edges and old monastery ruins. It has survived our war against it. The question now is whether we will survive our war against ourselves. Every suburban lawn drenched in herbicides could instead support a perennial vegetable that feeds families for generations. Every garden struggling with annuals that require constant replanting could shift toward resilient perennials that persist. The future does not require inventing new solutions. It requires remembering old ones. Ground elder is not a miracle plant. It is simply what food looked like before we decided food should be profitable instead of nourishing. The path forward is not complex. Plant one rhizome, let it spread. Eat